It is a sunny day. Some clouds can be seen here and there. A mother bird is feeding her young worms. It's Chinese New Year, and it's about to happen. A group of 4 people are talking about something disturbing. We are looking at a cozy, air-conditioned glass building. Ruddy pancakes are frying on a frying pan. A child is crawling on the floor and trying to get some words out. The parents are admiring her. An older couple is looking at the phone and discussing the boy, equating him with Jamin. Someone is flipping pancakes before they burn. It is a young blonde freelancer who is 32 years old. The mother next to her is proud of someone. She asks the blonde to look at her phone. The daughter says that she has seen this video clip many times before and can even predict the phrases in advance. Meanwhile, the father has already begun to pull the pancakes together. The blonde woman got really angry and assured him that they were not ready yet. She started screaming and complaining that only one of the 3 of them was cooking. The mother stood up for the father and mockingly asked her daughter if she wanted to live in their home forever. The blonde woman was ashamed. The man, in turn, supported the woman and suggested that she find a partner. The daughter, of course, rejected this possibility. The little girl with pink sleeves ran into her grandmother's arms. The man with the cheekbones politely greeted her and invited her inside. A pretty girl with a bob complained of leg pain and fatigue after a long trip. She was offered a massage. The blonde woman greeted her younger sister with a smile and handed her a floral print apron. The girl kindly replied that her older sister looked great in that apron, but she wouldn't mind feeding her noodles. This is considered a blessing for the wedding. The blonde woman put on a fake smile. Not wanting to back down, she insisted her younger sister put on the apron. With her sweet face, the blonde began to threaten. The mother could not stand the threats against her younger daughter and slapped the older sister. With a furious rage, the blonde woman began to complain that she was the only one working here and demanded immediate help. The younger sister's husband intervened and supported his wife in the fight. It turned out that the young couple would have a 3rd child, and the father reproached the blonde woman, saying that she should take an example from her sister. The girl had a worried expression on her face. She was smoking a cigarette and thinking about the pitifulness of her sister's husband. Suddenly someone came up to her and noticed that she was swearing. It was a young man with glasses who was unpacking something. A piece of chicken. The blonde girl was wildly surprised why he was eating in the smoking room. Then she politely asked the bespectacled man who he was. Sweat was pouring down her forehead, but the guy was calm. Then he began to remind her that she might have seen him walking with headphones on, because he was her neighbor. The blonde shrugged her shoulders. Then she kept repeating his name and running something through her head. And bingo, the girl screamed. Laughter could be heard almost throughout the neighborhood. The blonde girl remembered that she actually knew the bespectacled man, the same nerd who was always playing games. The girl pointed a finger at the guy, saying that he had changed a lot and that he was a psycho for eating in a smoking room. The bespectacled man explained that this was the only place where he could eat in peace and not gain weight. The guy was the same age as the girl. They had lived in the same neighborhood since childhood and just happened to get along. That's when the blonde girl remembered something. Let's look back in time. In their class, the bespectacled man was a loner. He was quite shy and pretended not to know his neighbor. The girl did not dare to realize something. Was she interested in him then? Silence. We do not know the answer. The blonde did not understand why she was remembering the past. Suddenly, she called herself an ugly duckling and remembered her unemployment status. The girl watched the bespectacled man carefully. She wondered how he had changed since they were children. She analyzed his age, career, and especially his appearance. Something was bothering Bilyavka, and it wasn't just the fact that she was unemployed. Then, with despair, she thought about all her skill sets, which were completely opposite. The bespectacled man had some incredible motivation. They were sitting on a bench, and the blonde was embarrassed comparing him to herself. But when asked how he was doing, the guy answered quite casually. He didn't think he was living his life to the fullest. Then he admitted that he also had some problems. Namely, he was worried about his parents' nagging dissatisfaction with his marital status. It's unbelievable, but they even signed him up for a bachelor show, and they were serious about him. Then the blonde rethought whether the bespectacled man was really as good as she thought. The girl remembered that she was in a similar situation. Then she turned to the guy with a brilliant idea. It came out of the blue. The blonde suggested they get married. The bespectacled man asked in surprise what he had just heard. The girl did not back down and argued why it would be beneficial for them. Both were puzzled by the development. The blonde continued to insist on explaining that there was nothing wrong with it, because they were both single. The bespectacled man could not utter a single constructive sentence. The girl realized that she had overreacted and wrote it off as a joke. She crossed her sweaty fingers. And she admitted that she liked the bespectacled man. Suddenly, the blonde girl was numb. The bespectacled man and began to propose marriage to her, but he was interrupted by the girl's parents. Everything was a blur. The young couple had already exchanged vows. I don't know if their events were unfolding faster or if the plane was flying. In the end, the bride was still shocked by it all. She couldn't understand how this was possible, but the others didn't care. They were having fun. The soda fizzed. A satisfied bespectacled man in a white coat appeared on the horizon, almost accepting the fact of the marriage. The groom politely asked his wife if she wanted to take a shower. The blonde woman said she would do it a little later. She was holding a cool drink, but her face was still covered with drops of sweat. She looked at one point and could not believe it. The screen has stopped working. Here's a quick reminder of what we discussed in the last chapter. The two loners decided very spontaneously to get married so that their parents would no longer reproach them. Here they are happy because they will no longer be reproached for being lonely. The bespectacled man drinks his soda with gusto. Afterwards, he burps heavily. This is how the first night of their honeymoon began. The blonde woman was holding a foreign passport. She couldn't believe how she was abroad. To be sure that she wasn't dreaming, she pinched herself. Still, it was a very strange reality. She asked herself why she had agreed to this. She envied her fiancé's abs. He quickly covered it with a blue t-shirt with a star print. The blonde girl did not look away from the squinting gaze. She slapped her cheeks and forced herself to remain calm. Her fiancé noticed and suggested that she take a break. Then the blonde woman saw the bespectacled man looking for something in his suitcase. He said he was looking for something that would ensure a peaceful night. The girl did not immediately understand what he was talking about, and a second later she felt hot. She replayed his words in her head over and over again. She was terrified. Then she completely lost her mind and began to imagine him in cobalt blue. The bride blushed and began to rethink everything. After all, they were a married couple, and it was only natural. But she could not get used to the idea that it could happen in a matter of minutes. Finally, the bespectacled man found what he was looking for, and the girl screamed. The groom held out his hand with earplugs in it. The blonde woman looked at him in surprise, and he explained that sometimes he snores. The guy tiredly took off his glasses and said good night. The blonde woman continued to stare at him with her mouth wide open. But the bespectacled man was not disturbed for a moment because he had managed to fall asleep. That's when the girl realized that wearing earplugs was a good idea. She was happy to stop snoring. Then, lying down on the soft bed, she thought about how she expected too much from a nerd. The blue sky welcomes us. It's our honeymoon. So sweet as honey. Everyone dreams of this, regardless of their gender. The expectations are like in paradise. Exotic food, beloved spouses. But man is an insatiable creature. Therefore, no matter how wonderful our life is, it is not enough for us, and we will find a reason to spoil the paradise atmosphere. And now let's get back to reality. Day 2. Morning. The blonde was already tense and slightly irritated. She was thinking about what to wear to attract her bespectacled fiancé. There was a choice between something unconventionally exotic and something free and unobtrusive. Then she noticed someone enter the room, but she was still undecided. Her fiancé entered the room in casual clothes, tired of waiting for her for so long. He stunned the blonde with his appearance, namely his clothes, although he did not see anything wrong with them. The girl angrily poked at his sandals with socks. He explained that it was very comfortable, and no one would see it anyway. The girl said that she already saw it. She grabbed him by the ear and dragged him along, and he didn't mind much. We came across a boutique with stylish clothes. The girl was leaning against the wall, and was already doubting whether it was worth coming here. She seemed to want to update his image, but at the same time doubted whether it was worth it. Suddenly, the bespectacled man pulled back the curtain, and the girl was almost speechless. There he was, her fiancé. The groom wondered if the blonde woman approved of his new look. But she didn't care anymore. She had almost accepted it. And then she shouted in anger that she would not stand for it. In the blink of an eye, he found himself wearing a green oversized t-shirt with a print. Then he began to doubt whether he looked okay now. The blonde woman assured him that he looked good now. She liked this outfit and wanted to wear it all the time. The bespectacled man looked at her. Then he went to the saleswoman and asked for 7 more sets. The girl was in despair and did not understand how he managed without her. She explained to him that they would take a lot of clothes, but different ones. The blonde began to rummage through the hangers and pick out the right options. Meanwhile, the groom noticed something. It was an open, brightly colored women's swimsuit. He asked the bride if they would go on a banana boat next time. Then he unexpectedly offered to pick out a swimsuit for her. This puzzled the blonde woman. She screamed in disbelief. It was a hot summer day. The girl was clutching the package her fiancé had bought her. She assured herself that he really bought it. She did not know how to interpret what she was carrying. It seemed like it was mutual, that is, she chose his clothes and he chose hers, but still, it might not be for nothing. The girl walked awkwardly beside him. She was pleasantly surprised by the gesture of the bespectacled man, because she thought he was not from such a time. The boats were around him. The lock opened. The girl walked past the curtain, wondering what might be waiting for her there. She remembered the bold designs of the boutique outfits, and was in awe. The blonde didn't believe that a nerd could do that, but she wanted to believe it. She looked at what he had chosen for her in disappointment. There were shouts of displeasure everywhere. The bespectacled man's mouth dropped open. The girl stood there ashamed in a black diving suit, while everyone around her laughed. The groom, not understanding anything, began to tell her about the comfort and originality of the suit. The blonde woman grabbed her head and asked if this was definitely a honeymoon. The bespectacled man proudly confirmed that it was. The girl invited him to look around. He looked at the sexy dressed young women and men. They wore brightly colored outfits. Bilyaka was smoothly leading him to conclusions. He was acting like a fool and really didn't understand what was going on and what his fiancée was hinting at. She was disappointed to think that she would not be able to enjoy herself fully in this image. The blonde made joyful noises. They were racing at breakneck speed. Their swimsuits fully justified themselves. The young couple also had great pictures taken. In the restaurant, on the pier, in the water, the sky was colored orange. They were walking along the warm sand by the sea. The blonde girl crouched down and looked at the phone and said that they had only a part of the way to go. The bespectacled man addressed the girl by name. He asked if she was tired yet, but she pulled away and shouted that there was not much time left. The groom pointed to her callous wound and she looked at it. She was surprised that she hadn't noticed it. Then she began to assure him that it was just a minor scratch. He did not want to listen. He sat down on his haunches. He ordered her to sit on his back. The girl was embarrassed. They agreed to forget about the rest of their plan. He held her slippers with one hand and held the blonde woman with the other. They walked slowly into the sunset. The girl was worried if the bespectacled man was having a hard time, but he assured her that it was a good workout for him, and that her weight was just right for him. The blonde girl tightened her arms around his neck. She tried to remember the last time she had been carried on his back. It felt incredibly good, and she felt calm. She breathed into his ear. He pulled away in surprise, not understanding why the blonde did that. She was happy to be with him. The blonde was over the moon. The sky was already covered with all the shades of the rainbow. Suddenly, the girl offered to take some photos, but they had already taken them. This photo was different from those with a special atmosphere. She was holding a phone with them on the screen, an unbalanced blonde and a drugged-up bespectacled man. The girl stared at the photo for a long time. Then she remembered the words of her younger sister, who assured her that they would not last until the middle of their honeymoon. The fact that they hadn't had a fight yet was surprising to the blonde. She caught herself thinking that as a foreigner, she was having a lot of fun here, and even wanted to live here. She covered her face with her hands, and thought about the events of the evening. The way the bespectacled man had offered to climb on his back. And how did that happen? At that moment, her heart almost broke. The blonde girl remembered his broad back, how warm and comfortable she felt on it. She could not understand why she was thinking about it. The girl recognized that she had indeed been very lonely before. She looked at her sleeping fiancé and admitted that she felt happy next to him. The blonde girl began to get attached to the bespectacled man without noticing it. The girl covered herself with a blanket and blamed her pleasure from the trip on the money she had spent. Note their honeymoon cost $400 plus for an independent tour. It was pretty good. The airplane was flying through the blue sky on free wings. The young couple had a surprisingly good honeymoon and had already returned home. There was a delicious meal in front of them. The blonde girl was salivating. The mother had prepared a surprisingly extravagant dish for her daughter. The girl's attention was drawn to the boxes. Were they moving somewhere? The mother said that only her daughter was moving to her son-in-law's house. Bilyavka was terrified that she was really leaving her parents' house. She remembered how she had told everyone that she would be moving out after the trip. Her parents began to support their daughter in this difficult decision. The van was already speeding away with an overloaded trunk and a mountain of boxes. The girl put her sweaty hands in her lap. Her expression was a bit worried. But she was serious. The bespectacled man handed her a blank sheet of paper and asked her to begin. Before continuing the story, we will recall the legendary song. Try again, it's okay if you make a mistake, because you're not grown up yet. The blonde girl didn't really understand the meaning at the time, but only now she began to understand it. She held a pen tentatively in front of the blank page. The song reminded her that she was no longer a child, and that her mistakes would cost her dearly. But still, people are allowed to make mistakes. The blonde woman recalled how her extreme life began, and maybe it was then that she shouldn't have thrown words around. It was through marriage that her parents had sent her away, and then this contract that her official husband had insisted on. She looked at the sheet where she was supposed to write down the clauses, and she could not contain her rage. The bespectacled man did not understand what had happened, but the girl assured him that everything was fine. The blonde was already sitting and thinking about whether it was really necessary. Her husband could not wait for her to finish the contract. But the girl could not decide. She was afraid to make a mistake. And then she let it go and quickly began to fill in the blanks. They agreed to show what they had written on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. There were 3 points on the bespectacled man's sheet: 1 to stop smoking, 2 not to disturb the rat, 3 to speak up immediately about his complaints. The blonde girl's sheet also had 3 points, namely, 1. Not to enter the room without permission, 2. Not to be overly insistent, 3. Discuss problems whenever possible. The girl immediately shouted at the first point of the groom's list. She was outraged by such an unexpected request to quit smoking. She was not ready for it. The bespectacled man said that he could not stand the smell of cigarettes, and that she should at least try to quit smoking. The blonde also reacted violently to the second point with the rat. The groom thought he had already talked about the animal before. Suddenly, the girl noticed something touching her leg. It was woolly and mewling. It turned out that the bespectacled man was calling his cat a rat, and she came running when she heard her name. The blonde woman did not understand why her fiancé chose this name for his cat. He explained that it was because of his love for rats. The bespectacled man introduced the cat to the bride as the owner of the house. The girl politely greeted the cat and said that it was at her service. The bespectacled man immediately asked if the blonde woman hated pets. The cat looked at her with wide eyes to make sure she wouldn't refuse. The bride was confused. The rat looked extremely cute. The blonde girl gave up and finally agreed to have the cat. The bespectacled man offered to hold her pet, describing it as gentle. The girl held the cat in her arms while it slept peacefully. Then the girl became a little curious. What if she hated cats and was allergic to them in general? What would her fiancé do with the rat? Maybe he would have chased the blonde away. The bespectacled man looked at the girl with his usual look. He said that he would give his cat a separate house. The blonde girl was furious because she didn't understand how he could spend money on that. The groom explained that his wife's comfort was a priority, and that if it was necessary, he would not pay attention to the contract. Bilyavka was touched by his words. She caught herself thinking that he was also thinking about their marriage. Even she hadn't thought about it that way. There was a jar of red paint on the table. The couple was to use it to put their fingerprints on the contract. Everything written in it was based on mutual respect. They reread everything written. Then suddenly the bespectacled man remembered something important. The blonde girl did not understand what he was talking about. The groom said that this marriage contract could be terminated by either of them at any time. The girl pulled back a strand of hair, and instantly it dawned on her that all these conditions could be terminated. It was clearly written on the contract. It was a contract. They had already dipped their fingers in the red paint, and they wrote down some more details of the contract, something like they don't fully realize what they are doing yet. They both sat in the lotus position. Then the groom turned to his blonde girlfriend and said that first of all, he was at her service. She smiled sweetly at him. They shook hands. And about this joke contract, they couldn't imagine what he would make them do. Cry and laugh so much. There was no turning back, because the seals were already shining on the contract. It had already happened. The contract was finalized. The first night at the bespectacled man's house went well. The girl was shopping with her phone. She was surprised at the price of the furniture, but still decided what she wanted. The blonde thought that she could put her things away only if she had the furniture, and her fiancé would be going to work tomorrow. She laid down on a soft blanket her mother had bought her and decided to go to bed. Then she opened her eyes. She realized that from that moment on she was lying in her own home. However, she was tormented by remorse. She still did not believe that she was married. She thought of the bespectacled man who was playing games in the next room. Slightly hunched over, he was staring at the monitor. Then she calmed down and thought that it was still an interesting experience, and she was already sleepy thinking about it. But the girl was worried about it and couldn't sleep. It was already getting dark outside. The blonde girl was sleeping like a log, and her mouth was watering. She was sleeping a dreamless sleep. I could hear water boiling. A knife knocks on the board, chopping vegetables. The blonde woman could barely open her eyes after such a sound sleep. Going to the kitchen, she saw her fiancé dressed in an apron and humming to himself, preparing breakfast. She was still yawning, apparently woken up by the noise coming from the kitchen. The bespectacled man apologized for the noise, and said that he was used to making breakfast in the morning as usual. Then he invited the blonde to sit together, and she gratefully accepted the invitation. With her hair tied up, she watched the cooking process demonstrated by her fiancé. She had never seen a company employee prepare breakfast before, and she immediately noticed that he was very diligent in this. The blonde woman watched him intently. The bespectacled man threw everything he had cut into a blender. The girl did not immediately understand why he did it. Instantly, the blender growled and began to mutilate everything that came under its knives. The groom brought the blonde a chicken breast protein shake. The girl asked him what it was, and he clearly replied that it was their breakfast. She did not immediately realize that it was food, but she decided to try it. She drank it all in one gulp and covered her mouth. The blonde woman asked him again if he hadn't mixed up anything, and if it was really breakfast. The groom said no. The girl got hope. The bespectacled man handed her a protein bar. The blonde snatched it out of his hands and threw it on the floor with all her might. She was extremely angry that he called it breakfast. She wanted normal food. The bespectacled man was confused that the girl called a protein bar not normal food. She assumed that he was mocking her and would eat delicious food at work without her. Then the groom showed her his lunch container. Then Bilyavka had memories of the freak eating his chicken in the smoking room. Still, the girl did not fully believe in the good nutrition of the bespectacled man. So to make sure, she looked in the refrigerator. She was stunned by what she saw. The girl instantly remembered how she had complained about her mother's side dishes. She was lying on the floor like a mad woman and promised to be good. The blonde girl convinced herself that there was plenty of food to eat. The groom offered her some soup or rice. The girl was surprised and asked if she could really eat it by herself. The bespectacled man assured her that he had no intention of forcing her to eat the same way as him. So if she wanted something, she could go ahead. The blonde realized that they could really eat separately. She hadn't realized this before because her mother had forced her to eat breakfast with the family. Calming down, she turned her gaze to her fiancé. He was on his way out. He was getting ready for work. The blonde said goodbye in a sleepy voice. The bespectacled man gave her what she thought was a condemning look. Then she sarcastically asked him if he didn't like the fact that she wasn't going to work today. He started to get upset, but it wasn't what she thought. But it was too late because the blonde was already furious and reminded him once again that she was looking for a job. Calming her nerves, she said goodbye once again. The groom called out cautiously. The girl waved sweetly at him, and as soon as the door slammed shut, she raised her fists in victory and shouted that she would play as long as she wanted. The blonde laughed in victory. Now she could play until she ran out of money in her account. A driver was driving along his usual route when a nice couple passed by. He admitted to himself that he envied them in some way. Then he heard a knock, and he saw the bespectacled man. They hadn't seen each other for a long time since he was on his honeymoon. The driver admitted that he was a little surprised. The bespectacled man did not understand what he was talking about. Then he explained that he had taken a very unexpected 10-day vacation. He was very curious about the spontaneity. Maybe he would like to share something. The driver knew that his boss was unpredictable, so this only sweetened his curiosity. The bespectacled man turned his head toward the window, but the driver continued to stare, and even remarked that he was not used to seeing him smiling so much. The bespectacled man hesitated. Then he remembered his blonde girlfriend who had accompanied him this morning and smiled even more. Then he hinted to the driver that it was an incredible feeling to have someone waiting for you at home. He did not understand who he was talking about. He asked directly who was waiting for him there, and the man replied that his wife was waiting for him. They almost drove off the road. The driver burst out laughing in disbelief. He even thought that the bespectacled man was talking about one of the games, but the man assured him that he was talking about a real woman. He explained that he had gotten married last week and even offered to show the driver her photo. A scream was heard in the back seat. Only broken phrases could be heard. They echoed from the lips of a woman with bangs who was sitting in the back seat listening intently to the entire conversation. High-rise buildings. Wild laughter. A group of people gathered around the bespectacled man to congratulate him on his new status. The man even bought his colleagues souvenirs from his honeymoon. Someone even noticed that he had become kinder after marriage. And some complained that he didn't even invite them to the wedding. The man justified that it was extremely unexpected, so the celebration was modest. A worker mentioned his unfinished work with the code. It wasn't urgent, but he still wanted to finish it ahead of time. Then he felt someone's hand on his shoulder. It was the brunette from the car calling him. There was a frantic scream. The woman began to strangle her assistant. The man realized he could not escape and surrendered to her. And she, in turn, began to scream and remind him that he said that the bespectacled man did not have someone he liked. How could this wedding have happened? The assistant could barely breathe from her kicks. He said that he did not understand how it happened. His colleague did not understand how the bespectacled man could do it. He even thought that the nerd was not interested in girls. Everyone knew the bespectacled guy as a fitness fanatic who doesn't drink alcohol and is only interested in himself. The brunette was extremely unhappy. Let's rewind the scene. We also rewind the fight a little more. Done, that's what we need. A theatrical production of a brunette's life. Let's get acquainted. The manager for the moment. She's a former tech goddess, a former talented child, a former goddess of this world, according to her parents. Her ideal type is a reserved, good man. A shot from her school age, where she explains in more detail about her ideal, namely, he should be well-mannered, handsome, attentive, domestic, mature, and intelligent. A shot from her teenage years, where there are fewer requests for a future chosen one, namely, a little taller than her and one who will be on the same wavelength as her. A shot of an adult brunette, where she assures us that she doesn't care who he is, let him just be reliable. A shot from her middle age. A woman with a stone face, not giving any comments. That's how she ended up alone from the moment she was born. And she is already 32 years old. Her colleagues had a rough idea of the brunette's situation and who liked her. At such moments, the manager put on a fake smile. It's 1:23 on the clock. The woman was tired enough. She lay down on the edge of the table and wondered why she was so unlucky with good men. Then someone put his hand on her back. It was a bespectacled man who had just finished his work, and the brunette thought he would be a good option for her. The meat was perfectly cooked. The bespectacled man's assistant sat there and told the brunette that it would be a piece of cake for him. But did she already have a ceremony hall in mind that she wanted to visit? The woman with the glasses said that 2K1 as a wedding fee sounded pretty good. It will be a beautiful wedding around May. The church bell tower will proclaim their inseparable love. The bespectacled man will carry the brunette in his arms, and they will have 2 children. Then, in an instant, all dreams shattered like broken glass. The woman assured her colleague that the nerd was not the only man in the world, there were many others. He agreed. However, these words did not comfort the brunette, and she burst into tears. It was already quite dark outside. The bespectacled man was staring at his phone, and did not realize that the 2 were watching him. The brunette's colleague was not entirely sure that it was worth it, but the woman was very serious. The brunette offered her a bet, a married man with glasses, or the end of the world. The second option seemed more realistic. The woman was determined to win anyway, so she did not consider the option of failure. The purpose of their tracking was to make sure that their colleague was really married. Then the brunette noticed that the man was acting as if he knew the woman and assumed that she was his wife. The brunette wondered what kind of woman could have charmed him. Smoked tobacco fell from the cigarette. The blonde was sitting on all fours, looking like a hoodlum. The brunette could not contain her laughter and surprise at what she saw. The flashlight was shining directly on the blonde. The bespectacled man greeted her, saying that he was already home. She looked at him. He was confused. Then he asked her what had happened. The girl shouted at him angrily. It suddenly dawned on the brunette that the modest manager liked women with strong characters. The blonde continued in a rude tone, asking why her husband was coming home so late. He calmly replied that he had come home right after training. The wife said with contempt that he could have warned her, otherwise she would not have waited for him for dinner. The bespectacled man was surprised that she wanted to eat with him, since this morning she had wanted them to eat separately. The blonde woman continued to insist, accusing her husband of having agreed on such things in advance. And the pursuers both held their breaths, waiting for what would happen next, and at the same time stunned that they might actually be married. The bespectacled man asked in surprise if he could really call her first. The man thought that she would not be comfortable with him calling. The girl looked at him dumbfounded. Then the bespectacled man reminded her of the events of the 5th grade of junior high school. The girl stunnedly told him that these events took place when they didn't have phones. At that time, he still called her from his home phone and offered to meet and play at his house. But her classmate ignored him. It was so long ago that the blonde girl could not remember these events. Then she started to scream, but stopped for a moment because she heard some rustling from the wall. The bespectacled man didn't care and asked the girl if it was still normal for them to invite each other to private meetings. The blonde said she had never minded it. Her colleagues were very scared because they were almost caught red-handed. Finally, the blonde and the bespectacled man got along and were on their way back to the house. Meanwhile, the brunette remembered that he had seen this bull-headed girl somewhere before. She was brushing her teeth thoroughly. Still, she was not satisfied with the fact that she had chicken breast for breakfast and dinner. She was also worried that the bespectacled man remembered events from 20 years ago. She twisted her hair around her fingers and suddenly realized that it was when she stopped playing with him. The ice cream was almost exactly broken. Her classmates were enjoying it. The blonde girl remembered more and more, for example, that she and the bespectacled man lived in the same neighborhood and went to the same kindergarten. They were quite close. But her classmates teased her because she was friends with the boy. That's why they started to drift apart. The bespectacled boy didn't understand what happened, and the girl just didn't want to be bullied. After that, they went to the same high school. The boy behaved in his usual way. The girl was the first to ignore him. He could not do anything about it. The blonde girl recalled it with shame. She did not understand why she behaved that way. They had not been in contact with each other until those days, and now they were married. The girl checked their correspondence and the messages. There was only a brief discussion of issues related to the wedding. The blonde could not believe that they did not have any normal dialogues. Now she was blaming herself for getting angry with him recently. She wondered if she should go and apologize to him. The bespectacled man was holding his phone. He couldn't bring himself to do it. It was too difficult. One click and the message was already sent. It was addressed to his wife. The blonde woman opened it and smiled sweetly. It turned out that the bespectacled man had decided to treat her to chicken legs. Suddenly, the girl came back to his room. The man said that she should have knocked before entering, and the girl made 2 mocking knocks on the already open door. Clause 5 of the contract. It is important to discuss if there are complaints about something. The blonde woman said that she had some complaints. At that moment, she was smiling like a psycho. There was appetizing food on the table. The blonde woman threw a bottle of beer over her shoulder. It was straight from the delivery. The bespectacled man turned to the blonde. He still wondered what she had to say about him. Had he done something wrong? The blonde woman said that he had used the wrong etiquette. He asked her again. The girl pointed to a bottle of beer. And then she shouted whether there was any point in eating chicken legs without beer and banged on the table. The bespectacled man blushed when he heard that it was about food again. The blonde woman said that they had never had a heart-to-heart. The man said that chicken legs don't have to be eaten as an appetizer, but the girl insisted that they were like an appetizer. She started pouring beer for him, asking him to drink with her. The bespectacled man stood his ground and refused. The blonde was sweating, and she didn't understand why. What was the problem with just having a beer with her? The man abruptly grabbed his arm and began to show off his pumped-up muscles. The girl immediately thought what a fool she was. They had different lifestyles. She advised the bespectacled man to forget her offer, because she wasn't going to bother him with it anymore. And she began to escort him to her room, since they wouldn't be able to have a drink together. Then she opened her eyes wide. But the bespectacled man obviously had no intention of backing down. He accepted her offer in an instant. He wasn't going to drink the same as her, but he wanted to sit next to her. The girl seemed to like it, and asked what he wanted to talk to her about. The bespectacled man began to pour his wife a beer. She felt uncomfortable. They had time to talk seriously, but the blonde woman didn't know what the conversation should be about. The first thing that came to her mind was to clink glasses with him. She had a huge mug of beer in her hand, and he was clutching an ordinary glass of water. She assured herself that nothing bad would happen if she drank a little. 2 hours passed. And it really happened. The girl asked if he really didn't remember being cold and angry that day. And the bespectacled man did not remember. She didn't believe him and mocked him for pretending, noting that he was shaking with anger. He said that he had been simpler then, and how many times he had to repeat it. The blonde woman laughed at him. She said it was incredible. The events of the past. The bespectacled man came to the girl's house after school, and they were playing a game, fighting and quarreling. They were having fun. Both were sitting carefree on the floor. Loading. The man suddenly noticed that the blonde fell asleep right at the table. The girl was drooling. It was obvious that she had drunk a lot of water. The bespectacled man began to think about what to do in this situation. He approached his wife. He stretched out his hand. A little closer. Then he touched her. The blonde woman stood up screaming. He had scared her. The bespectacled man didn't want to do it. He was just worried that she might get sick if she slept here. He offered her to go to her room, and he would clean up after them. The blonde woman yawned. It all happened only because of the alcohol. After all, the portion was designed for both of them, and since he didn't drink, she had to drink it all herself. The girl asked for an ear, and she began to tear off his glasses and try them on. Looking through them, she noticed that the man's eyesight was rather poor and blamed it on the fact that he had been playing games every day for a long time. The bespectacled man demanded his glasses back, but the girl was not going to do it. She demanded that he take them by force. The bespectacled man asked if she was drunk. The blonde girl continued to tease and mock him. It even got to the point of insulting him, saying that he looked terrible in them. And in general, such thin glasses are worn by old men. Is he one of them? For once, the man blocked the blonde's path by pressing her against the wall. She didn't mind and began to play along with the fact that she couldn't return the glasses because she was now trapped. Then she noticed how close he was to her. The bespectacled man was looking her straight in the eye, and he claimed that she would give them back to him. Now the girl looked a little scared, but she still stood her ground. She couldn't turn the cigarettes around because she was still pressed against the wall. The bespectacled man asked her menacingly if she would give them back to him. The table was still uncleared. They were standing quite close to each other. He looked at her, and she looked at him. The blonde abruptly put glasses on his nose. And she ran away. She stopped for a moment and felt her heart beating. She stood there dumbfounded. She could not understand what it was. The blonde woman remembered his serious face then. Why the hell had she done that? The next morning, the bespectacled man was getting ready for work. The blonde woman watched him and saw him as an ordinary man. The bespectacled man felt the girl's eyes on him. He asked her what had happened. She hadn't been herself since yesterday. The blonde tried to convince herself that nothing had happened. Suddenly it dawned on her that she should apologize to her husband and continue to behave normally. She called out to the bespectacled man. He looked at her. The blonde woman could not say a word. She had a hard time apologizing. Sweat was pouring down her face. The cat could not understand what was happening to her new owner. The blonde woman was getting tired. She reached for her pet, gently sneaking up on her. The bespectacled man did not understand why the blonde woman called him, and switched to the animal. The cat felt fine, but the girl felt terrible, because she never dared to apologize. The bespectacled man's subordinate learned the morning's details. The brunette asked him again whether the bespectacled man's wife had really been pretending to be a cat. He confirmed that it was. The subordinate decided that the man was just bragging about his married life, but the man said that because his colleague was more experienced in love affairs. The brunette asked if the bespectacled man had told anyone else about it, such as the brunette. But the man hadn't talked to her yet. The subordinate calmed down and advised to discuss such topics with him first. Then he thought about how to act in such a situation. Maybe the blonde was just trying to make a cute joke, but they weren't close enough to do that yet. The brunette asked if she was really his woman. He pulled a comb out of his pocket. He began combing through her thick hair, claiming to be a professor of romance. In fact, the more complex the problem, the easier it is to solve. It's like formatting and checking for a problem in your computer. The brunette already had an idea. The bespectacled man was confused. Events after work, the man came home. The blonde was acting nice. Then he remembered the words of his colleague. He taught him that sympathy is the most important thing. The brunette advised him that whenever he was not sure about something, it would be enough to watch the girl's actions and repeat it. The bespectacled man had already assumed what he was going to say. They were both wearing armor. The man stated the cause of death, embarrassment. Then they returned to reality. The bespectacled man did not understand why his colleague's advice did not work on the girl, while the brunette said that the blonde was very angry that the bespectacled man had told strangers about what had happened between them in the morning. They started a quarrel. This catty incident ended up as an additional clause in their contract, and it remained in the dark past that will never be forgotten. A new rule: everything that happens between them must be kept secret. But the bespectacled woman still had a question. What did she mean by the word meow, a few days after the start of their busy youthful life? She slammed the table with all her might. Everyone around her froze. It was a great idea. The brunette was convinced that they should throw a housewarming party. It was already late in the evening. The blonde's eyes grew wide and pale. The bespectacled man invited her to celebrate the housewarming. The girl did not understand why so suddenly. The man explained that after everyone found out about his wedding, they wanted to congratulate him, so it was a great opportunity. And it would all be voluntary. If she doesn't want to, she can say her wish. The blonde woman unexpectedly supported this idea. Now the bespectacled man was not sure. His colleagues really did not insist. But the girl wanted this party. She put one foot in front of the other. She crossed her arms and felt satisfied. Housewarming. After moving into a new home and getting married, it is customary to invite a family of friends to celebrate. Simply put, inviting and welcoming them is a tradition of maintaining good relations in the future that is not mandatory. Before the guests arrive, the owners of the house need to prepare, so everyone avoids such events. The blonde woman did not understand why she agreed to this. It was because she hated the bespectacled man. The man tried to talk her out of it, but she was stubborn. But the blonde still thought that the bespectacled man was mocking her because of her recent mistake. Although the man had no such idea and, on the contrary, wanted the girl to think carefully about her decision. The blonde did not back down from the idea. She had a feeling that he didn't want to organize this party. She wondered why he didn't tell his colleagues about it. The bespectacled man really didn't want to. The girl tried to calm him down. He looked back. She didn't understand the look. Then he smiled slightly and went to work. The blonde girl was puzzled as to what had bitten him and why he looked so happy now. He was being forced to do something he didn't want to do. Shouldn't he have been disappointed? Blondie's observation log. The first sign of a glasses wearer. He's obsessed with efficiency and looks like an eco-friendly robot with a dead battery. Evidence 1. Blending food. Evidence 2. Working out or playing at home. The second sign. He is weak in requests. When pressed, he will eventually give in. Evidence 1. He will never refuse a request. Evidence 2. He still wears the clothes the blonde bought him. The analysis of the bespectacled man, taking into account the evidence presented, is complete. Then the blonde thought that he was capable of canceling the housewarming party under the guise of her. The girl turned pale. Then she began to guess what her husband, neighbor, partner, and bride called her. The blonde girl was worried about his smile at the end, if he was omitting something. But she didn't care, because starting today, she would start to arrange the house. And most likely in 2 hours, she would already regret it. Bilyavka was absorbed in the kitchen, discussing with her mother about cooking for the party. Her slow cooker was on fire, while she was trying to figure it out. It was not easy for the young woman. Meanwhile, the bespectacled man had already brought the guests to their house. Now, instead of being irritated, the blonde woman smiled sweetly at his colleagues and invited them inside. The bespectacled man barely recognized her. They stumbled over each other. The blonde threatened him that he should treat her well, and he reminded her that he had warned her not to do that. The girl was not like herself. She politely continued to invite the guests to come in. The table was overflowing with food. Everything looked very appetizing. The blonde was modest and invited everyone to the table. The brunette even thought they ate like this every day. The bespectacled man wanted to say how it really was, but the girl restrained him. The laughter could be heard in the street. Everyone was having fun. The bespectacled man even drank alcohol, which was unlike him. The brunette turned to the brunette with a condemnation. Now she was finally convinced that the bespectacled man was married. The woman didn't want to believe it, and was looking for evidence why it couldn't be true. She pushed her colleague. He assured her that he would continue with the job, but only if she stopped hitting him. The brunette coughed and introduced himself as a pie and the company's mascot. New items were added to his biography. They include: he participates in all corporate events, is the boss of entertainment, and is a pleasant person to talk to in the company. The atmosphere reached a critical point. Before everyone came here, the brunette asked them to write down what they would like to know about the bespectacled man. And the blonde, as his legal wife, would have to answer these questions. Now anything could come out. Question 1. A task from. He didn't finish. But he looked at the brunette. She averted her eyes. Until a single word was spoken. The blonde continued to laugh. She was already eager to know the first task. It said that the two should kiss. However, her colleague did not say anything about it. It made the brunette very angry. The bespectacled man touched the blonde's hand. He wanted to know if she was okay. The girl did not understand what he was talking about. The bespectacled man explained that the atmosphere was rather strange, and he thought they would ask about something personal, but they had agreed not to talk about family matters. The blonde clarified that they were married only on paper. Then it would be nice to pretend to be a happy couple in front of others. They thought it was a pretty good idea. The blonde woman warned them that they should answer confidently and flexibly so that it would not bother them in the future. The bespectacled man agreed. And so a new rule was born. A certain degree of flexibility is allowed for a smooth relationship. The brunette was about to ask the next question and suddenly noticed that it was quite personal. It read as follows: under what circumstances was the marriage proposal made? If they didn't want to talk about it, they had to drink a beer. The girl wondered if it had ever happened before. She wanted to skip the question and just drink the beer, but the bespectacled man blurted it out. The blonde girl couldn't believe he said it. The brunette asked the girl if it was true. Memories of the wedding up to this point. The bespectacled man was eating a chicken breast in the smoking area, and the blonde girl brought up the subject of the wife. Then the brunette opened his mouth wide. After all, the blonde chose not to answer the question and accepted the testimony. A colleague remarked how hot she was. The girl threatened to talk to the bespectacled man later. The mood lifted. The questions did not end, and were still quite serious. The next question was when and where they had their first kiss. The blonde tried to remember. Maybe it was at the wedding? No, because they have a typical contractual relationship. And if the bespectacled man kissed the blonde, she would kill him. And it would be strange if she said that the first kiss was at the wedding. The girl hesitated how to answer her. She decided that she would skip the answer again. The waiting time was over, and the bespectacled man blurted out that it happened in kindergarten when they were 5. The blonde girl spat out her beer. The guests were very interested in this confession, as they hadn't even met him then. Have you and the blonde girl been friends since childhood? The bespectacled man asked his wife if she had forgotten her childhood nickname, the kissing ghost, because she went around kissing everyone. The blonde woman was furious at what she heard. It was too much for her to remember. Everyone admired how well they fit together. It was getting dark outside. The guests were already going home and thanking the host for a good time. After they left, the blonde immediately grabbed the bespectacled man by the ear and dragged him into a serious conversation. She told him to answer moderately. The brunette had just noticed their quarrel, and she began to think about it. There were already many stars in the sky. She could hear the engines of vehicles. The brunette looked at her sad colleague. She obviously suspected something. They discussed what had happened in that house, and they noticed that the blonde and the bespectacled man were somehow different from other married couples. The brunette didn't think that only a few things were suspicious. He asked the woman if he should investigate further. She said it didn't matter now. The man understood and said that he would set her up with him. The car braked sharply. It was quite dangerous. The brunette didn't understand why the brunette was giving up so easily. Why did she suddenly say she wanted to see everything with her own eyes? He realized it the moment he saw them. This was not a place where anyone else could squeeze in. The brunette continued to stand her ground. It was definitely over for her. She was already convinced of that. The brunette praised her colleague for working so hard all the time. Honestly. Suddenly the car turned sharply in the opposite direction. The man said he was suddenly thirsty. He invited his colleague to join him. It wasn't fair that everyone was enjoying a drink and he couldn't even take a sip. The woman didn't need to drink with him, just to be with him. The brunette smiled sweetly. The man decided to treat his colleague and asked her what she would like to eat. The brunette chose Korean beef from Tu Plus. They had a nice conversation and joked around on the way. The brunette was a bit cheeky, and the man played along. There was a small sumatoka around them. Birds were chirping on the wire. The brunette woke up and was dumbfounded. The brunette was looking at him, equally surprised. Only not this. They were lying in the same bed. It was more like the beginning. After the housewarming celebration. The next day, Saturday, 11 a.m. The bespectacled man was on his knees. They had a day of reflection. The blonde woman asked if her husband had finally realized where he had gone wrong. He assured her that he should not have answered those two questions in detail. Then he asked why. The blonde woman explained that there was no point. It called into question whether they were really married. Suddenly, the girl forced herself to calm down. The cat began to snuggle up to the bespectacled man. The blonde recalled how he had bought her 7 pairs of identical clothes on their honeymoon. In addition, this psycho's diet consists of protein bars and sweet potatoes. She was wrong to think that she could have any constructive dialogue with this man. And yet the blonde forbade him to tell anyone about their childhood kisses. And if someone asks about it, it's better to talk about something else. After all, is there any married couple whose first kiss was in kindergarten? Although there are some smart people. Then the bespectacled man wondered how she suggested answering such questions. How and where did their first kiss happen? It was really strange that a married couple had never kissed before. There was no kiss at the wedding. They could have just pretended it happened when they were drunk. But the blonde continued to rack her brains. She had never even thought that she would have to worry about it. Shouldn't there be a first date first, and then a first kiss after a week of relationship? The blonde didn't know what to do, and what to come up with that would be believable. Suddenly she saw that her mother was calling her. Her parents were both in the video call. They were asking how she was doing. It took the girl by surprise, so she and the bespectacled man pretended that everything was perfect. The parents had good news for them. The blonde tried to guess their location. It turns out that today was the premiere of The Spaghetti Man Who Went Astray. And here is more details. Who is a spaghetti man? The main character is a hacker who ate radioactive spaghetti and then got superpowers. The blonde woman asked to end the conversation. She was already annoyed by it. The parents came to the theater at the opening and watched the movie together. The video call was interrupted. The bespectacled man did not know what to expect. The blonde woman told him to get ready. For those who are a little lost in the events, this is a kind of family punishment. The couple was going to the movies. If one of them hasn't seen a new movie, for example, the one who has seen it makes a spoiler for the one who hasn't seen it yet. Once, the blonde made a spoiler for her mother, so she took it out on her daughter. The blonde briefly explained to the bespectacled man that if he didn't watch the movie on the day of release, she was in trouble. And so, unplanned, they went to the movies. The blonde girl ate popcorn and drank a Coke. Although the seat was not central, she didn't mind. The bespectacled man was gloomy. The girl asked the man what was wrong with his face. Maybe he doesn't like spaghetti men or doesn't like movies at all. But he was also a fan of such movies. The bespectacled man waited and really wanted to watch. Then he adjusted his glasses and said that it reminded him of a date. The man covered his face. The blonde girl screamed so loudly that they were even asked to be quiet. The girl wondered why he was talking about it out of the blue. The pasta monster looked amazing. It was incredible. The girl didn't know what she was doing. And then the following happened. She touched the bespectacled man's hand. He hesitated for a moment. He was confused. The girl took her hand away and covered her face. She was going crazy. Then she began to sob like a baby. She liked the ending so much that she could not even describe it in words. Of course, there were some sad moments, but it was still the best thing she had ever seen. She wondered what the glasses guy was thinking. The number one sign of a movie was someone is looking at that person. He clenched his fist. Note: the bespectacled man has been addicted to spaghetti for more than 20 years. The man said with tears in his eyes that he had no regrets in this life. The number 2 sign during the movie is that the audience was happy when the person liked the movie. They were leaving the theater, and the blonde girl was hitting him on the back, and thought that the decision to take him with her was the right one. The girl couldn't stop talking about the movie on the way home. Suddenly she realized something. She was in a hurry to avoid spoilers. As she said, going to the movies on the weekend and these conversations. After all, it was their first time with a bespectacled man. And then a passerby walked past them. He cut the blonde woman off. She did not realize what had happened. She fell right on top of her husband. The girl was pressed with her face to his. It looked like a kiss. It happened right in front of the ticket counter. Everyone around them was looking only at them. She still remembers that kiss in detail. It happened very unexpectedly. He even gave the kiss to the ground. A mother with a child was passing by. The woman respected that such debauchery was not acceptable in public. But the boy was having fun. Suddenly, something pushed the girl away. The bespectacled man stopped the kiss. He held the girl's jacket and just looked at her. She asked him to put it down. They stood there for a few seconds and couldn't understand what had just happened. Then suddenly the girl started running as fast as she could. The bespectacled man shouted, "Cancel." The blonde girl turned around and confirmed that she was canceling. After all, there is a 3-second rule. It was popular when they were in elementary school. You can undo everything that happened within 3 seconds. Even food that has fallen down can be picked up and eaten within 3 seconds. The girl realized that she had said a complete load of crap and started running away again. Smoking room. She was sitting in the place where they decided to marry the bespectacled man. She realized that she had fucked up badly. She remembered with shame what had happened. The blonde suddenly noticed that she had violated the contract. She threw the cigarette butt into the ashtray. I did not understand how I would look my husband in the eye now. But it was too late. He had seen everything. Then the bespectacled man carefully adjusted his glasses and said that he thought the blonde had quit smoking. After she had finished smoking, he decided to get rid of the smell. Then she dared to ask him if he didn't care about what had happened between them, that their lips were together. The girl looked at him and waited for an answer. The bespectacled man was not confused and said that the 3-second rule still applied. The bespectacled man offered to eat. The order was ready. It was a delicious sandwich with bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes. The blonde woman was dumbfounded. Why was he so calm? The bespectacled man's order was as follows: a fried baguette with chicken and soda. Since she told him to pretend that nothing had happened, he did just that. It was amazing. The girl didn't understand how he could eat a chicken breast after all they had been through. The blonde woman warmed her hands with the smoke, and the bespectacled man walked looking at his phone. She remembered that unexpected kiss, and she was the only one who was so worried about it. It was just two 30-year-old people touching each other. Then the blonde thought that they were married and had watched the movie for the first time and kissed, and maybe the bespectacled man had awakened some feelings. It was like a bummer. Then the bespectacled man turned to the girl. He thought it wouldn't work.